Hey there, little buddies, and welcome to yet another edition of the Boob Tube Buddies podcast. In this episode, we'll be discussing the STARZ original series, American Gods, Episode 5, entitled Lemon Scented You. Anyway, I'm Mothman. This is Devin, who I don't have a clever name for this time,
Damn it.
so I do apologize. That's the one thing I forgot to prepare, and there's so many good ones. You know what?
Ruined.
You are the only gold coin that matters. There you go.
On the fly.
Right?
On the fly.
Woo!
Nice.
Right? Hey, hit us up on social media. We're on all the social media, even just to share out when we post an episode so your friends can see what you also enjoy. That's really the best way to help us grow. Obviously, we have a Patreon account. If you want to contribute $1 a month or something like that, we appreciate it. We also have our Audible and Blue Apron codes to get yourself some stuff and also benefit us. We now have over 200 episodes, and we have not made a dime in terms of profit. It's all just operating costs. So we love doing this. We do it for all of you. So just please let everyone know about it. But without further ado, shall we get to some news, Devin?
Let's do it.
All right. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think we're all... So, I don't know. Are you a big Final Fantasy junkie?
I'm not. I know you are. I've always kind of liked the culture and some of the character designs, but I've never actually played a full Final Fantasy game. I had 7, mainly just because everyone raved about it, and I was totally not into RPGs at that time. Like, the idea of turn-based, that was actually, I think, other than Pokemon, the first turn-based type game I played, and as a middle schooler with ADD, like, turn-based was not cutting it for me. I like that stuff now. I've played more games like that in the since then, but no. Anyway.
You actually know who I hung out with yesterday? Speaking of Pokemon, I hung out with Foxman yesterday, and we were catching up to date with some of our most recent shows, and I started talking to him about Dragon Ball Z, and he sat there and said he had never seen it before because he was too old, and he jumped into Pokemon first.
See, I jumped into Pokemon first, but never really watched the show. Like, I did the trading cards in the game, but like for anime, it was all Dragon Ball Z for me, you know?
It blew me away because I'm like, how can you not watch Dragon Ball Z but invest your time into Pokemon? I mean, come on, dude. Come on, bro.
Jesus.
So that tends to be the case is even though if you're not a Final Fantasy buff, you still have at least played 7. Most people have. And the internet and gaming community freaked the F out when it finally announced that they would be remaking Final Fantasy VII for the PS4. Now, it kind of went into lingo and we haven't heard anything since like 2015 until just this weekend when they announced that they have no longer are keeping the project with its outsource company for development. They're bringing it back to develop in-house. I guess they're pulling away the work from a company called CyberConnect, which I don't know if you're a Square Enix dude or not, but they have done a lot of stuff with them. They do a lot of their mobile stuff. But it made me scratch my head because I'm like, this is a huge project. Everyone is aware this is a big project. Why are you not developing this in-house? Why is this not your absolute number one priority?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those projects that, like, they've basically never wanted to do or showed any interest in, really. They're a forward-thinking company, I think, in a lot of ways, and don't really want to just relive their past glory. At the same time, fans have begged for it. So when I see a story like this, my guess is that they were probably just hiring a company to basically remake the game scene for scene, but just with realistic graphics. And otherwise, it'd basically be an HD remake, kind of like Crash Bandicoot's coming back out, and it's literally just a much better looking version of the same game, same mechanics. If it's not broke, don't fix. It's a classic for a reason. Right. So it's not crazy, but at the same time, like, I imagine they just weren't getting the result they wanted. And then maybe they were thinking like maybe a few mechanics like a modern audience might seem tedious. So instead of us just emailing you a million corrections every single week or something, we'll just take it over. So I get it. Yeah, but that's interesting. No developments, and then development is like, all right, we're gonna take this shit seriously for once, right?
Yeah, they really only showed one kind of working gameplay, and it looked like they had basically just dropped the characters into their engine setup for Final Fantasy 15. So it's so hard to tell what's going on. They're kind of like Apple. They're super secretive until they're not secretive anymore.
Yeah,
And then they just dump more information on you than you want to even hear.
So the one I have, I actually have two, but it's kind of exciting stuff, right? Netflix announced that they would be making a prequel to The Dark Crystal. So oddly enough, there's actually been a sequel in development for years. Even Genndy Tartakovsky, the guy that does Samurai Jack and Dexter's Lab, and he did like the Hotel Transylvania movies. He was even signed on to do it, but that fell through the cracks. But that's actually also happening, but not as a film. So you're going to have a 10-episode Netflix prequel. You're also now going to have a 12-issue comic book that is the sequel. All of this happening in the span of the next 2 years, which is ridiculous. In light of this, there's actually now a rumor that Ridley Scott is going to be working on a prequel to his 85 film Legend. And what he's going to do is going to tackle the genetic origin of the Lord of Darkness and make the entire mythology unnecessarily convoluted.
Legend Prometheus.
Right, yeah.
2.7.
There is no rumor that he is prequeling that, but it is kind of this thing where they're mining all of the like 80s, 70s, and 80s classics, and even films like Dark Crystal that aren't actually considered a classic by like critical standards, but are a nostalgia classic and just visually gorgeous. Like they're really hitting the vaults to get all these things, right?
Yeah, I mean they've been talking sequel for Dark Crystal for years, and I think it's called development hell. We've all experienced it. Jurassic World is a good example of one.
Preacher, I think, is my favorite example because it actually came to fruition. But damn, that thing was like a decade in development.
They do, but it used to be that it'd be stuck in development hell and then it would come out and everyone would be just disappointed. And they kept holding off on things like Jurassic World. They kept putting it off. And then when they finally committed to it, the thing made bank like you wouldn't even believe. So maybe they're just kind of loosening their purse strings a little bit and saying, hey, let's try these projects that obviously had enough interest for us to spend 10 years trying to decide whether or not to greenlight it, rather than jumping in with all this new material that we're going to turn around and spend another 10 years deciding whether we want to develop it or not.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. I think you had one last one for us.
It was that in the same lines of Final Fantasy, the PlayStation 3 is finally dead. No longer in development in Japan.
Crazy, and that's what, after 11 years and 80 million units sold. Right? Like, what I will say though is I read that story and it just tells me that the Japanese have a hard time letting go because the PS3 wasn't even profitable for the first 4 years. So that bitch came out at $600 and they were losing, I think it was like $100 per console, like just straight up loss every single one sold because they wanted to be, they basically were beaten by the 360 and wanted to get out as soon as possible and come to market. And what that tells me is that because that's a franchise or at least a system that wasn't the most successful, especially early on, I don't think there's ever going to be an end to the Godzilla franchise. I think we're going to be in the year 8000 and there will still be Godzilla movies.
Godzilla versus Mothman's second cousin.
Versus Mothman, not Mothra. All right,
Mothra. There you go.
I'll take on Godzilla.
No, it's that far down the line.
Yeah. Where it's that far down the line. I'm now this cybernetic being that just towers over cities, and I'm taking on the green monster. I actually just watched Shin Godzilla last week, and that movie is fucking great. It's the first new. It's like a reboot. It's the first new Godzilla movie from Japan in a long time, but really well done. Not like, kind of the typical creature feature that they put out in the past. So anyway, that was the news. We're probably about to enter spoiler territory simply because we're going into our second segment, which is Summon It Up in a Tweet.
Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up. Summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up. Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up. Summon it up and up.
Tweet.
Hey guys, so summon up in a tweet. I think I'm going to go first. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds great to me.
All right. So we'll see how big of Neil Gaiman buffs are out there. So, did Leica do Neil a favor? Necrophilia? Not for this puppy. Poor little leprechaun. It's all the mega villains world. Obligatory dick in the shot.
Very good. All right, I like it. All right. I had a hard time with this one because a lot happened. And I wanted to make it rhyme, and then I didn't make it rhyme. So anyway, here it is. Reunited and it feels lukewarm. So reunited and it feels lukewarm. I thought that was pretty good. Wednesday and Shadow aren't your usual suspects. Frankentits has super strength, which Mad Sweeney learns the hard way. I was pretty proud of Frankentits, by the way, because of that one scene.
You show me up all the time.
I don't know. I mean, I show you up with like cheap gallows humor and like just like lowest common denominator dick and fart jokes. Meanwhile, you write pure poetry over there. But anyway, that was
I've had Reunited stuck in my head for so long because of the first. I went back and listened to the first one back that you did with Foxman, and it's just been stuck in my head for 3 weeks, and I've been cursing you, and now I'm gonna have it saying lukewarm in my head.
Wait a minute. What did I do with Foxman?
You did a new podcast. I can't remember which episode
it was just the first time Fox and I had podcasted in a while.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
and for some weird reason, that's been stuck in my head of you singing that. So now you've changed it even more.
Yeah,
for
whatever reason, I my mind predominantly thinks in South Park moments and like spoofs of songs. I don't know what it is, but so I'll share an example literally from this morning that had Julia and I laughing. So we unfortunately lost our dog a week or so back, and we now have decided to become a foster family for bull terriers because we can't deal with grief. And we just got one who was just neutered, but his his balls are sore and he can't really lick them or anything, and I guess they just shrink over time. That's how they do it. Anyway, his name is Tut, and he kept trying to bother his balls, and I go, "Hey Tut, leave those balls alone." Which I thought was pretty good as well. Like I said, that's just my
natural brilliance.
It's just my life.
Just in the moment.
I had an employee the other day ask me if they could stay late, like to accomplish a few things, and I said, "We've got the hours." Like legitimately, this is just a thing I do all the time. It's kind of an issue, I think, but hey, it works well on a podcast.
It's always in 70s pop too, isn't it?
I think so. Like for whatever reason, it's all from albums I've never owned and songs I've never listened to of my own volition. It's all just shit that played on the radio as a kid, I guess. Yeah. So this episode, also one of my favorites. I'll say that right out of the gate. Last episode and this episode. And in the context of the series and all the bitching and moaning we did for the first 3 episodes, I wonder... Really just 2 and 3. I wonder why this wasn't episode 2 and 3, other than like the reunited part with him and Laura. Like, why wasn't her origin episode 2? Why wasn't their reuniting episode 3? And then why didn't they just cut things differently to where episode 4 is the escalation with the police and everything else? Like, I look at everything that's shot, I look at all the great acting, I look at all the cool visual effects, and it's literally just an editing problem.
The last episode we were talking about how it kind of worked in its favor, this odd editing that they're doing, but today this episode would have been one where I don't think it worked in their favor. I think it actually made you kind of scratch your head and go, yeah, why? And it's actually, I'll take it a step further. Half this episode should have been like episode 2, and then the other half should have been episode 7. So they're cutting around in such a weird way that this episode's events actually has me a little worried that this super cool event that I've been looking forward to might not happen. So, and I'm not going to go into it just because I don't want to spoil it, but I mean, we finally got, for example, the big reveal, based later in the episode, the big reveal about who Wednesday was. We also got introduced to the mega villain of it. And this is all stuff that happens a little bit later on. And you get in the book the reveal of who Mr. Wednesday is during the big event that I was on. And it was a big, huge kind of like, oh my gosh, I get it. And they've been slowly trickling it in until they finally just kind of said, in a confusing way, confirmed, who Wednesday was. So it's just been weird. And there's parts of it that I like, and then parts of it where I'm like, why is this getting split up in such this awkward way? I don't get it. It just stands to confuse everyone and confuse even fans of the book. I mean,
yeah, and I'm all for keeping things interesting, right? Like when I watch The Walking Dead, I want to be on eggshells and not know who's going to live or die, even though I have read all the comics. So I'm not one to say it like it needs to be exact. Like the first season of Preacher almost worked as a prequel, yet they did have moments from the first few issues. So there was like some fan service, and yet there was also an air of mystery. So it's not so much that, it's just in general. And I mean, I can't speak to the event and the effectiveness of different reveals. So I won't debate you there, but in general, like just the editing and pacing and what they've chose to put where, that's what doesn't make sense to me. Once again, we've had multiple scenes with individual gods. Some of them have gotten more than one scene, and yet there's still not a relevance here. I almost think of if they did the reverse of what they did, where the episode all plays out, which is the linear story, and then the end of the episode is like elsewhere or whatever. It would almost work as like kind of a bookend. But as far as this episode goes, you have Shadow and her be reunited. I thought there was a cool moment where you kind of realize that, like, she says something to him about when you die, you rot, and gods and what happens to you after you die seems more than anything to be based on just your beliefs, right? It's not that one religion's right. It's just that if you believe in Jesus, then you'll go to heaven. If you believe in the Egyptian god, you'll go to their version of heaven. Whatever you believe in, that's kind of what happens. So the fact that what happens to her is she just rots and like then has to basically get covered up and get into a hot bath so that they can have sex together, which was just weird. She's like dipping in to get her lips warm for him, and he's just like, what the fuck, and trying to learn why she cheated on him and get all the context. But like her acting once again was just great.
Yeah, she was just Ian McShane and her are killing it. Yeah. Holy crap, they're awesome. I gotta say though, I'm a little tired of Hollywood's kind of portrayal of infidelity, the aftermarks. It's starting to become kind of a I don't know, what's the word? A typecast where it's just, oh, we're gonna sit down and have this adult conversation, and you just need to kind of accept that this happened and decide whether or not to move on. I mean, I get that that's an adult way to approach it, but it's this weird kind of lack of emotion for a medium that is supposed to display emotion. I mean, is that just me, or are you seeing typical norms? Do you feel like you see typical norms like that?
I don't feel like I see that. I mean, granted, I don't watch a lot of like relationship movies, so you know what I mean? It ends up being just that it happens in a movie that otherwise would interest me. With her, it didn't ring untrue simply because it really did seem to mesh with the personality. Now, had we not had the origin episode before, I wouldn't have felt that way, right? Like if we didn't if like this was just, if they ended episode whatever it was 3 with her on the bed and then it came immediately to this, I might have been thrown off because of how callous she was in the delivery. At the same time, once we got the origin and realized that's just how she is, because I mean, that's also how she talked to, what's her name? It was an Amber or Amy, but basically the best friend's wife. It's just in general, they've shown her just to be that way. Like even just the way she's talking to death as she dies. The way she's talking to his best friend when she's saying it's over. Like, look, I told you this wasn't going to be a thing. He's like, well, what if I wanted to? He's like, look, I'm sorry if you became attached, but this was just he's in jail. I needed, someone, like, but I've been honest with you. Like, so she's very much that logical, rational, I've been up front the whole time. So if you're saying a larger thing where just characters are being more this way, I mean, I don't know. I think it, to an extent, also is kind of a millennial thing where they're more, like, sexually open. So, like, you're just having conversations like this that no one would ever want to have watched kind of play out, but in general I do think it kind of meshes with her character,
Well, the interesting thing with that is she seems to be kind of her arc is that she just kind of exists. So she has kind of a lack of emotion, except for an internal self kind of hatred, I guess. I mean, I don't know how best to describe her manic, depressive kind of episodes that she was having in the last episode, but overarching, it seems to be that she is kind of, it's kind of a play on her to say, okay, she existed before and she still kind of is existing. So it's weird to sit there and play the angle of saying, hey, I needed an emotional connection while my husband was in jail, when she kind of is the lack of emotion embodied. But
maybe not an emotional connection, probably a physical one.
Yeah, the wine did it.
Yeah, right, the wine did it. She did actually provide context, though, because she was like, I was going to do it, then I wasn't, then I was going to, then I wasn't. Then the cat died. So I had no idea that there was ever even this thought in her head before that scene, because all we saw was the scene where like they're dealing with that and he moves in. So it was already something like on her mind that she was, fighting, right? So outside,
they answered your question last week about whether or not she caused it, because she said in this episode that he swerved. So I don't know if it was just a trick of the way the camera was.
Well, no, because that's right. She said I unzipped, and he goes like rookie mistake or something like that. Because I guess I don't know. I'm trying to think about it, but like there's worries with the zipper, so like I think a guy is more confident unzipping his own stuff that it won't get like injured, and so maybe that was the implication. So yeah, they did answer that question. Other than that, we find out she has basically superpowers because she fights Mad Sweeney. She obviously is not really tied to material goods because he offers her all the gold and he just wants that one coin. We don't know why that coin's important yet, correct? But there is a significance of coins. We're just meant to know that it's important.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
No spoilers there.
Okay, fair enough. Well, at this point, maybe we can go ahead and throw over to Mike with his excellent segment, I Might Be Myth Taken, and then we'll do an ad. But when we come back, I'd really like to dissect, the entrance of Mr. World, the interrogation, all the stuff that happens that I didn't quite follow, mainly because it was the dog was, a handful, and go from there.
Yeah.
All right. Be right back.
Licking balls can be distracting.
I know. Jesus.
Creature don't preach.
And now, here's Mike.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of I May Be Myth-Taken. I'm your host, as always, Mike, and let's go ahead and jump right in. This week, we're going to be talking about Anubis, and he's one of the more ancient gods in Egyptian mythology, and typically his role was that of the Lord of the Underworld. It's also a role that's going to be credited to Osiris, and we'll get into that just in a little bit. As you can probably extrapolate from the episode, Anubis ushered souls through the afterlife and oversaw the scales of judgment. And, we actually got to see that in the show where your heart is weighed against this feather and it determines whether or not you're able to pass into, what we would think of as heaven more popularly, or purgatory or hell on the other side. And typically, he's actually more closely associated with mummification and the embalming process. And he was like a protector of cemeteries and that sort of thing. So he was a pretty well-liked god. And sometimes in popular media, he gets kind of a bad rap. But in Egyptian mythology, he was definitely somebody they liked. He wasn't one of the bad gods, I guess is a way to put it. And the mythology surrounding Anubis is complex, too. I mean, especially considering his relationship with Osiris, who is often considered to be his father, even though Osiris is probably younger when it comes to the actual telling of Egyptian mythology. And the confusion is kind of a result of multiple religious beliefs being kind of blended into one more popular one. So, Anubis is older than Osiris, and yet Osiris is his dad, so that's a little strange. And Osiris would kind of become the Lord of the Underworld and take over much of what we know Anubis was credited for. And, he's also better known probably by his image than by his name. He's known as the Jackal God, and he has that black dog head that we're also familiar with if you've seen any kind of Egyptian artwork or hieroglyphics or anything, or if you saw the movie Stargate, right? And we're really familiar with that. It's always the dog's head, or it's actually some kind of Egyptian golden wolf, as it turns out. And, in the show, his character name in the real world is Mr. Jacquel. So obviously the reference is there to him being the Jackal God. And that's about it. I was really curious about the cat. If you've read the book, you kind of know about the cat. We'll have to see if they address it in the show. I hope they do. If they do, it might be something that we cover a little bit later. But thanks for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Preacher don't preach.
Good day, Boob Tube Buddies. Are you looking for a little mental stimulation? Do you desire to explore the fantasies of mind, science of the future, whims of days gone past? But of course, yet the only time you can devote to such a brilliant hobby is filled by the monotony of daily responsibility. You now have a solution to your predicament. Check out audibletrial.com/boobtubebuddies to try out a free month, where one gentle soul shall provide you with a candid retelling of many stories, both old and new. Ha ha! What convenience! There are hundreds of thousands of stories to choose from, ranging from the classics to wizards. Or you could listen to the newest political autobiography, if that's your thing. One shall not judge. So check out audibletrial.com/boobtubebuddies for your month of experience that shall not cost you a pence. And have a blessed day.
Okay, we are back. Thanks again to the Philosopher, who's continuing to give us fantastic content. You can hear him currently doing Since 8 with Kristen, the Netflix series, which is fantastic. They're doing a great job there. He's also just done a bunch of different movie podcasts with me and Fox. Most recently, I think it was Guardians. And then also he's done, if you are watching Black Mirror or have watched Black Mirror, there's a podcast for every episode, in which case he does a segment about the moral stuff. So really good stuff there. Thank you once again. Before we actually get into the Mr. World stuff, on the break you brought up the opening. So this opening, we've always raved about the openings, just haven't really raved about how they fit in. But the stop motion look of the CGI, was amazing. Really, really cool.
The quality of it was for TV. That's why in my tweet I was saying, did Leica do Neil a favor? Because Neil,
Leica.
Leica.
I was like, wait, what character is Leica? I just forget character names. I'm like, no, Leica is the people that did Paranorman and Coraline and Kubo and the Two Strings. Man, deep cut.
They're a phenomenal company, and
absolutely.
This now granted it was only 2.5 minutes worth of content, but that's still no small feat. A full CG pipeline like that for a small project, that's kind of big for TV. And so for me, I was kind of blown away, and I spent some time trying to figure out if that was Leica or not, and I couldn't track it down. So I'll have to pop in for the next episode, and I'll try to track down who it was, maybe talk to a couple buddies. But whoever did that, whatever company did that, did a phenomenal job.
I'm sure it's just
story was kind of
super broke people in California that also just didn't get paid, like Sausage Party. Probably who it was.
I haven't watched Sausage Party. Too common a story. Way too common a story.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So that's great. I mean, you get more imagery with the fiery bull, which I don't necessarily know what that means yet. But it's kind of Native American or indigenous people mythology making its way to America. AKA they already were here.
Time will tell.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Fair enough. So yes, I'm going to let you explain this, because there is the really cool in the limo scene with the technical boy if that name is right, and Media, who has taken on the image of David Bowie. And I absolutely love David Bowie. I love the references. And with me not fully understanding what's going on, she's basically saying Mr. World's having a change in strategy. Technical Boy's not having it and kind of pissed, but knows he has to kind of fall in line. But I just love some of the references in there. There's a Starman waiting in the sky. There's one other David Bowie one, and then he also said Technical Boy said something about mass delusion, and she said mass delusion happens all the time. 1938, and he's talking about the Orson Welles World of the Worlds broadcast that everyone thought there was actually an alien invasion, and kind of from then on, sci-fi really took off in visual media because it kind of captured the imagination of the people, and I think that's just a nice crystallized way to show the power of media as a god. So they're using media as a modern god, but I don't know that they've really conveyed the power of it. But that conversation in and of itself, I thought was really impactful and interesting stuff.
Well, a lot of what's kind of going on, the meat and bones of this episode is you're seeing it's not conveyed too well from Wednesday's side, but you're getting a feel of, okay, we at least have a divide between what are new gods and what are these other ones. And so the divide hasn't been drawn yet, and you can't classify them yet, but you get that there's two sides of gods that are at least quarreling for whatever reason. And so one of the things that's interesting is that you kind of get the conveyance that there's this newer age kind of mythology behind some of this technology, like Frog Boy or Tech Boy, who's obviously a little younger. And then, but you also at the same time, you have Media, who isn't necessarily a new concept. It's not a new theory. And so you get kind of this sense of evolution between at least Media and Wednesday, and you can get that feel for what Media is trying to get Wednesday to do by the whole North Korea sequence, which didn't quite get the unicorn reference. They kept focusing on it.
The reference either. It was a little weird.
But you get this kind of showing the evolution of, okay, we just need to bring you into a modern feel, and that's what the other quote unquote other side gods are aiming for. So I guess it's not so much of a spoiler to say it's basically going to be a battle and kind of a split and divide between the new gods and these older gods. And that's a lot of these kind of America stories are, is you're getting these old gods like Mr. Nancy, Matt Sweeney, and Wednesday.
So who is Mr. World? Like, what god is he?
Mr. World is an enigma, which is an unraveling of the entire story. So
okay, so like you know he's all powerful, but you're not supposed to immediately get what god he is. And I do love that it's Crispin Glover, and I absolutely love his performance. I've been waiting for him the whole time because he does so little. I love that his haircut is basically typecast at this point. Like, no one's gonna let him ever have anything modern. Like, he has to have that dumb hair. But like, yeah, it was just great seeing him. He just doesn't do much. But when he does, like, it's perfect. And I thought he just played this perfectly creepy villain. And they had that whole thing, which is kind of cliche, but I guess if you don't know the scheme of things, maybe you can buy it for right now. But it's kind of like the like what they spoofed on Austin Powers, where the Bond villain explains all of their plans and what they're trying to accomplish, and then lets the person live. And Technical Boy's like, you could kill him right now. He's like, yeah, but he's an honorable man. Like, he deserves a lot of respect. He's done a lot of good in this world, and I'd rather just have him on my side. So let's give him time to consider. He deserves that. Meanwhile, it's like, well, more like give him time to mount in defense.
Yeah, and that's where the timing comes. In the book, this is a later event, so you can already see now that basically the world is gathering together and at least trying to get in line some of his gods. And what I find the most interesting and actually the most scary part of these episodes is that the idea of this strong kind of control over us our own individual worships. We all kind of, media scares the shit out of me. Sum it up right there. Imagine media, and you can really picture, and she talks about this with the disillusionment with the Orson Welles thing. She goes on and she grows and she becomes television, she becomes the newspaper, she becomes all of this, and it's constantly evolving. For me, the idea behind this story is just so powerful. If you can sit there and suspend your belief to think that might be an actual relative power, that media could come in and run us like that. I think Gillian Anderson kills that too.
Oh, I do too. Being that this, how old is the book? The book's like, what, a decade old at this point, at least? It's gotta be, because I remember
13, 14 years old, because I think they just released the 10th anniversary one a couple years ago. So,
because I wonder if they'll modernize anything. I doubt they will, but I just think about the fact that media is this kind of curated landscape by professionals, right? Mm-hmm. You know, outside of indie filmmaking, it is professional media. Potentially with an agenda, and like a lot of people kind of spearheaded towards a common goal. Meanwhile, when this book was written, what you didn't have was social media.
Right.
And imagine that and what that would look like as a god. I think it would be closer to the unicorn, you know?
Right.
Just the
and that's the question,
like
you
the
have
weirdness
to ask.
of memes and everything else. Like, I wonder if they'll just have her evolve and go down that route, or if they'll have some another character introduced, because I think that's an interesting concept that would work well within everything else that's going on that wouldn't be in the source material but might make sense to add.
Right. And so that's where the concept gets is, are these gods deciding whether to evolve and focus on the new, or you got people like Wednesday, who is a big fan of the old, and they play a big part in that with this dementia scene, is he attaches to this older kind of mindset to the point that it even becomes a fault, and he uses it as his power. As he goes, oh, I'm just on the beach with my, at 17-year-old self or whatever age he was trying to do with the cops. But that's kind of the whole part of this episode, is they're showing that, hey, there's at least two sides. You can either decide to evolve and work together, and I thought it's not in the book, but I thought their portrayal of North Korea was pretty spot on timing, but it was a cool concept to sit there and say, I can evolve you into this, you'll be remembered forever as the nuclear bomb that wiped out a country. I mean, we remember Fat Boy, and we remember, what's the other nuke they dropped in Japan?
I don't remember the actual name of it.
But that's what they're trying to put onto him. But now that we know who Wednesday is, that's kind of a small hand to offer when you're considering the all-father of all gods under one realm of Norse mythology. So, of course, he's going to sit there and say, no, screw you. I'll take my chances myself.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But
go ahead.
There's one thing that I'm going to point out that I'm getting a little tired of,
okay,
and to the point that it was making me scratch my eyeballs, is Shadow asking, is this real?
I know, right? It's like,
dude,
real? You just told your dead girlfriend came back, and you immediately said, like, I guess she tried to placate him, like, do you want me to explain what's going on? He's like, no, I don't want you to explain what's going on. Nothing that has made sense since I've met Wednesday. There's a giant fucking storm brewing. Like, he seems so in tune with the fact that, like, everything is possible, like, you know, in the beginning of the episode, to then have him be just like, oh no, a woman's coming in dressed as Marilyn Monroe. How could this be real? Like, dude, suck it up. You know,
just gonna go with it. Either that, or if they don't have anything to have Shadow say, you don't have to give him a line. That's kind of his point, is that he is there.
He's a shadow
buffer.
It's in the name.
Exactly.
Keep your mouth shut. Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
So Mr. World, big deal, obviously.
Yeah, with his fucking face morphing, that was cool.
Their company that's doing that is a company called Fuse, and they do a lot of TV stuff, which is, they do some very, 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 very cool stuff.
Yeah.
So I also got to say, I loved the scene with Wednesday and his crow.
Yeah.
And then he comes in and he taps on the door. It works so well. Wait. Slow down. What, Lassie? Billy's in the well?
There is just some like good lines and good dialogue and good acting, and these are my favorite episodes. But like I said, cutting it a little differently, having these towards the beginning with maybe the interrogation scene later, kind of in summation, I think would have made this overall a strong show. But it's still very engaging. It's getting to a point where I'm actually more wanting to watch it each week, as opposed to like, oh yeah, I need to watch it for the podcast. Like, it's actually kind of on my mind now with the last 2 weeks of episodes. So I think we've kind of hit a turning point where now it's at the 7 out of 10 where it was like a 6.5. So cool. I mean, you ready to tie a bow on this bitch? Anything else?
No, other than that, this was the first episode we didn't have a sex scene in. Plenty of nudity, but no sex scene, which has been kind of a running thing per episode. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, there was almost like she wanted a sex scene. Didn't get it.
Wasn't happening.
Yeah. Gotta spoil the mood.
Although you do get a dick in every single episode, which I'm having fun counting the dicks.
I know you are. Oh man, I'm so glad. I'm so glad Fox isn't covering the show. It would be just a whole segment about him talking about the penises.
Nothing's better than hashtag space boner.
Yeah, no, that's true. Cool.
Alrighty. Well, drum roll. Wrap the bow. We'll see you next time, little buddies.
Fucking nailed it, bro. So proud of you.
Wow. Good golly gosh, guys. See you next week.
Yeah. All right.